When Lewis Hamilton received a cream-colored envelope at his Monaco penthouse, his hands started shaking. Inside was a wedding invitation from Gabriella Moretti, the woman he loved and lost 7 years ago. But this wasn't just any invitation. Tucked inside was a handwritten note that said, "Lewis, I need you there. Please come. There's something I must tell you." Most people would throw away an invitation to their ex-girlfriend's wedding. Most people would try to forget and move on. But Lewis Hamilton isn't most people. He booked a flight to Italy immediately, not knowing that his decision would change everything. What Lewis didn't know was that Gabriella was hiding a devastating secret from 7 years ago. A secret so powerful that it had haunted her every single day since they broke up, and a secret that would explode at the wedding altar in front of everyone. And what Lewis did next? It shocked the entire world into complete silence. This is the story of a love that refused to die, a wedding that ended in chaos, and a choice that cost Lewis Hamilton everything he'd worked for his entire life. Stay until the end to find out what Gabriella's secret was, and why Lewis made the most shocking decision of his career on a dock in Lake Como. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipped beneath the door of Lewis Hamilton's Monaco penthouse while he was finishing his morning workout. He almost didn't notice it. Cream-colored paper against white marble. Easy to miss. But something made him look down as he grabbed his water bottle from the kitchen counter. His heart stopped. The handwriting on the envelope was elegant, flowing, unmistakable. He'd know those letters anywhere, even after 7 years of silence. His hands trembled as he bent down to pick it up, sweat from his workout, making the paper slightly damp beneath his fingers. Lewis carried the envelope to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Mediterranean. Morning sunlight poured into the room, making the gold embossing on the envelope shimmer. He traced the letters with his thumb, not yet ready to open it, somehow knowing that whatever was inside would change everything. Finally, he slid his finger under the seal. Inside was a wedding invitation, printed on thick cardstock with gold edges. The words seemed to float before his eyes. Gabriella Rose Moretti and Alessandro Marco Rossi request the honor of your presence at their wedding, Villa d'Este, Lake Como, Italy. The date was 3 weeks away, and Lewis read the invitation twice, then a third time, each word feeling like a small cut. Gabriella was getting married. After all these years, she'd found someone. She'd moved on. She was building the life she'd always wanted, the life he couldn't give her. He should throw the invitation away. He should send polite regrets. He should absolutely not attend his ex-girlfriend's wedding. But then he noticed something else tucked inside the envelope. A small piece of paper, folded once. With shaking hands, Lewis unfolded it. The handwriting was rushed this time, less controlled. "Lewis, I know this is strange. I know I have no right to ask anything of you after how we ended. But I need you there. Please come. There's something I must tell you. Something I should have said 7 years ago. I can't get married without you knowing the truth. Please." Tikindrai Lewis sank onto the leather couch, the note clutched in his fist. Questions exploded in his mind like fireworks. What truth? Why did she need him there? What could be so important that she'd reach out after 7 years of complete silence? He remembered the last time he'd seen her, standing in the rain outside her Milan apartment, tears mixing with raindrops on her face. "I can't do this anymore, Lewis," she'd said. "I can't keep being the person who waits." He'd let her walk away, too proud to beg, too afraid to promise changes he wasn't sure he could make. Racing had been everything to him then. His identity, his purpose, his entire world. He'd thought he had time to figure out how to balance love and ambition. He'd been wrong. Louis pulled out his phone and stared at it for a long moment. He could call her. He could demand answers now, refuse to be manipulated into attending a wedding that would tear him apart. But even as he thought it, he knew what he was going to do. He scrolled through his contacts until he found his assistant. "Sarah, I need you to clear my schedule for the last week of this month. Book me a flight to Milan." "Milan? But you have the—" "Cancel it," Louis said firmly. "Whatever it is, cancel it." There was a pause. Sarah had worked for him long enough to know when not to argue. "Of course. Anything else?" "Book a suite at Villa d'Este on Lake Como. Private, away from the main buildings if possible." Another pause, longer this time. "Louis, isn't that where—" "Yes," he interrupted. "That's exactly where." After he hung up, Louis stood and walked back to the window. The Mediterranean sparkled below, boats cutting white lines across blue water. It was beautiful, peaceful, perfect. His life looked perfect from the outside, world champion, celebrity, living in paradise. But inside, he felt hollow. He had been hollow since the day Gabriella walked away. He looked down at the invitation again, at the note with its desperate plea. "There's something I must tell you." Whatever it was, he had to know. Even if it destroyed him. Even if watching her marry someone else shattered what was left of his heart. 3 weeks. He had 3 weeks to prepare himself for the worst day of his life. Louis Hamilton set the invitation on his coffee table and went to pack. Louis stood in his walk-in closet, staring at rows of expensive suits and designer clothes, but his mind was 8 years in the past. He'd met Gabriella Moretti at a charity gala in Milan, and he'd attended dozens of similar events, shaking hands, posing for photos, writing checks. They all blurred together. But that night had been different. She'd been standing alone near the silent auction tables, studying a painting with such intensity that Louis found himself drawn over. She wore a simple black dress, no jewelry except small pearl earrings. Everything about her was understated, elegant, real. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he'd said. She'd glanced at him, and he'd seen intelligence flash in her dark eyes. "Actually, I think it's technically proficient, but emotionally empty. The artist is trying too hard to be profound." Louis had laughed, genuinely surprised. "Tell me how you really feel." "You asked." She'd smiled then, and something in his chest had shifted. "So let me guess. You're here because your publicist said it would be good for your image?" Ouch, but fair. He'd extended his hand. "Louis Hamilton. I know who you are." She'd shaken his hand briefly. "Gabriella Moretti, pediatric surgeon. I'm here because the hospital I work for is the charity beneficiary tonight, and they dragged me away from a 12-hour shift to smile at rich people." Double ouch. But Louis had been grinning. "Can I buy you a drink to make up for being a rich person?" "You can buy the hospital a new MRI machine. Then maybe I'll let you buy me coffee." He'd written a check that night for twice what she'd asked. They'd gone for coffee at 2 a.m., still in their formal clothes, at a tiny cafe she knew near the hospital. They'd talked until sunrise, about medicine and racing, about pressure and passion, about what it meant to be so focused on one thing that everything else faded away. "I get it," she'd said, as dawn broke over Milan. "The obsession. When I'm in surgery, the rest of the world disappears. There's just me, the patient, and the work. Nothing else matters." "Exactly," Louis had breathed, amazed that someone finally understood. They'd been inseparable after that, whenever his racing schedule allowed. She'd come to a few Grand Prix events, though she hated the crowds and the cameras. He'd spend every free moment in Milan, in her tiny apartment filled with medical textbooks and plants she kept forgetting to water. For 2 years, it had worked. Barely. They'd stolen moments between his races and her surgeries. Video calls at odd hours. Text messages that said, "I miss you," and "I wish you were here." It had felt like enough because the alternative, not having her at all, was unthinkable. But slowly, imperceptibly, cracks had formed. Louis pulled a navy suit from its hanger, remembering. The cracks had started small. A missed anniversary dinner because of a crucial sponsor meeting. Her 30th birthday celebration cut short when he'd had to fly to Barcelona for pre-season testing. "It's fine," she'd said each time, but her smile had grown tighter, her eyes more distant. The breaking point had come 6 months later. Gabriella had planned an elaborate dinner for her birthday, the one Louis had missed the year before. She'd invited her entire family, people Louis had never met, because he was always traveling. It was supposed to be his official introduction into her life, the night he'd prove he was serious about their future. And Louis had promised. He'd sworn on everything he held sacred that he'd be there. But the pre-season test in Barcelona had run into complications. Technical issues with the car. His engineer had begged him to stay one more day. Just one more day to sort out the problems before the season started. Louis had looked at his phone, at Gabriella's excited text messages about the dinner preparations, at the photo she'd sent of the dress she'd bought specially for the occasion. Then he'd looked at his race car, at his team's desperate faces, at everything he'd worked for his entire life. He'd made his choice. The phone call to Gabriella had been the hardest thing he'd ever done. "I'm so sorry," he'd said. "There's a problem with the car, and I can't—" "Don't," she'd interrupted quietly. "Don't apologize. We both know you're not sorry. And you're exactly where you want to be." "That's not fair, Gabriella. This is my career. And I'm what? Your hobby? The thing you fit in when it's convenient?" You know that's not true. But even as he'd said it, Louis had wondered if it was true. Racing consumed him. It always had. It was the first thing he thought about when he woke up, and the last thing on his mind before sleep. Where did Gabriella fit in that obsession? She'd hung up without saying goodbye. When he'd finally returned to Milan 3 days later, flowers in hand and apologies on his lips, she'd been waiting outside her apartment building in the rain. "I can't do this anymore," she'd said before he could speak. Her face had been calm, but tears had streamed down her cheeks. "I love you, Louis. I love you so much it hurts. But I can't keep being the person who waits. I can't keep coming second to a race car. Give me one more season," he'd begged. "After this championship, I'll have proven everything I need to prove. I'll cut back on races. We can—" "You'll always have one more season," Gabriella had said softly. "One more championship to win, one more record to break, one more reason why now isn't the right time. I'm 30 years old. I want children. I want Sunday mornings with the newspaper and lazy dinners and someone who's actually present. You can't give me that. Maybe you never could." "Gabriella, please." "I hope you win," she'd whispered. "I hope you win everything you're chasing. I just can't wait around to see it happen." She'd turned and walked into her building, and Louis had stood in the rain, too shocked to move. He'd thought she'd change her mind. He'd thought she'd call, and he'd thought they'd find a way back to each other. But days had turned to weeks, weeks to months, months to years, 7 years of silence. Now, standing in his closet with a suit in his hands and an invitation to her wedding burning a hole in his conscience, Louis finally admitted the truth he'd been avoiding. He'd never gotten over her. Every woman he'd dated since had been measured against Gabriella's memory and found wanting. Every victory on the track had felt hollow, without her there to celebrate with him. He'd won 4 more championships, broken countless records, achieved everything he'd sacrificed their relationship for. And none of it, not one single trophy, filled the space she'd left behind. Louis packed his suitcase mechanically, his mind still lost in the past. Whatever truth Gabriella needed to tell him, and whatever reason she had for inviting him to her wedding, he would face it, even if it killed him. Because 7 years ago, he'd let her walk away in the rain without fighting for her. He wouldn't make that mistake again. The private plane cut through clouds somewhere over the Alps. Louis sat in the leather seat, unable to focus on anything. Not the reports his team had sent, not the streaming service on his tablet, not even the stunning view outside his window. Across from him, Marcus Chen set down his coffee cup with a deliberate clink. Marcus had been Louis's trainer and closest friend for 12 years. He was one of the few people who'd witnessed the aftermath of Gabriella leaving, the months when Louis had thrown himself into training with frightening intensity. He'd pushing his body to dangerous limits, as if physical pain could somehow numb the emotional kind. "You going to tell me what's really going on?" Marcus asked. "Or are we going to pretend this is a normal trip to Italy?" Louis didn't answer immediately. He pulled out his phone and scrolled to a folder of photos he'd never been able to delete. Gabriella laughing on a boat in the Monaco harbor, her hair wild in the wind. Gabriella asleep on his shoulder during a late-night movie. Gabriella holding a tiny stray kitten they'd found shivering in a Rome alleyway. Her face filled with such tender concern that Louis had fallen in love with her all over again in that moment. "The press is going to destroy you for this," Marcus continued. "Formula One champion attends ex-girlfriend's wedding? That's tabloid gold. They'll have photographers hiding in the bushes." "Let them," Louis said quietly. Marcus leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Talk to me, brother. Why are you really doing this? And don't give me that line about her asking you to come. You could have said no." Louis locked his phone and set it down. "Have you ever made a mistake so big that it changed who you are?" "We all make mistakes." "Not like this." Louis's voice was raw. 7 years ago, I chose racing over the woman I loved. I told myself it was the right choice, that I needed to focus, that I was too young to settle down, that there would be time for love later. But you know what I've learned? Marcus waited. Later never comes. You keep chasing the next victory, the next record, the next high, and meanwhile, a life, real life, passes you by. Louis gestured at the plane's luxurious interior. "I have all this: money, fame, achievements. I'm living most people's dream. But I go home at night, and the apartment's empty. I win a race, and there's no one I really want to call. I see couples at restaurants, arguing about whose turn it is to do dishes. And I'm jealous, because at least they have someone to argue with." "You've dated since Gabriella," Marcus pointed out gently. "Have I?" Louis laughed bitterly. "I've gone to events with models my publicist paired me with. I've had a few brief relationships with women who were more interested in Lewis Hamilton the celebrity than Louis the person. But dated? Really dated the way I did with Gabriella? No." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "No, what if seeing her get married breaks you?" "Then it breaks me." Louis met his friend's eyes. "But at least I'll know. At least I'll have tried. 7 years ago, I let her walk away without fighting. I was too proud, too scared, too convinced that my career was more important than anything else. I won't make that mistake again." even though she's marrying someone else? Even then. Louis picked up his phone again, looking at Gabriella's note. She said there's something she needs to tell me. Something from 7 years ago. What if it changes everything? What if… He stopped, afraid to voice the hope growing in his chest. What if she still loves you? Marcus finished. Louis nodded, barely breathing. And if she doesn't? If this is just closure for her? And if she wants you there to watch her marry this other guy so she can finally move on? The question hung in the air like a weight. Louis had considered this, had tortured himself with the possibility during sleepless nights since receiving the invitation. Then I'll be there for her, he said finally, because that's what you do when you love someone. You show up, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Marcus shook his head with grudging admiration. You're either the bravest person I know or the most foolish. Probably both. They fell silent as the plane began its descent toward Milan. Louis looked out at the Alps below, snow-capped peaks cutting through clouds like broken dreams. His phone buzzed. A text from his publicist. Media has picked up that you're traveling to Italy. Should I prepare a statement? Louis typed back. No comment. Another text, this time from his mother. I heard about the wedding. Are you sure about this, darling? He stared at the message. His mother had loved Gabriella, had cried when they broke up, had asked several times over the years if there was any chance they'd reconcile. She'd never approved of the models and actresses Louis had been photographed with since. I'm sure, he typed. I should have done this 7 years ago. His mother's response came quickly. Then go get her, my love. Life's too short for regrets. But that was the problem, wasn't it? Gabriella wasn't his to get. She belonged to Alessandro Rossi now, a man Louis had researched obsessively over the past 3 weeks. Alessandro ran a humanitarian organization, had a degree in international relations, spoke 5 languages, and by all accounts was a genuinely good person. The kind of man who probably never missed important dinners or broke promises because of work. The kind of man Gabriella deserved. The plane touched down, and Louis felt his stomach clench. This was real now. In 48 hours, he would watch the woman he never stopped loving marry someone else. Marcus stood and grabbed their bags. Last chance to back out. We can fly to Paris, get drunk, and forget this ever happened. Louis stood too, squaring his shoulders. No running, not this time. Then let's go face whatever hell you've signed up for. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. But for the record, I think you're doing the right thing. Stupid, maybe. Painful, definitely. But right. They deplaned into the bright Italian afternoon. A car was waiting to take them to Lake Como, to the Villa d'Este, to whatever truth Gabriella needed to tell him. Louis slid into the back seat and watched Milan's outskirts blur past. Somewhere in this city, 7 years ago, he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. Somewhere in this city, his heart had broken in the rain outside a small apartment building. Now he was back, not to fix the past. That was impossible. But to face it. To be present in a way he should have been all along. The driver merged onto the highway heading north toward the lake. Louis closed his eyes and tried to prepare himself for seeing Gabriella again. Would she look the same? Would she still bite her lower lip when she was nervous? Would her eyes still crinkle at the corners when she laughed? And most terrifying of all, would he be able to watch her pledge her life to someone else without falling apart completely? His phone buzzed again. Another message from an unknown number. Thank you for coming. Meet me tomorrow at sunset in the garden maze. Come alone. There's so much I need to explain. G. Louis's heart hammered against his ribs. Tomorrow. Less than 24 hours until he saw her again. He typed a simple response, "I'll be there." Then he leaned his head back against the seat and tried to breathe through the fear and hope and grief all tangled in his chest. Whatever happened next, whatever truth Gabriella needed to share, Louis would face it. Because 7 years ago, he'd been too much of a coward to fight for love. He wouldn't make that mistake again. How the Villa d'Este rose before them like something from a dream, or a nightmare, depending on perspective. Ancient stone glowed golden in the late afternoon sun, surrounded by gardens that cascaded down toward Lake Como's impossibly blue water. It was the kind of place where fairy tales happened, where princes married princesses and everyone lived happily ever after. Louis felt sick. "Mr. Hamilton, welcome." The concierge greeted him with professional warmth as he entered the lobby. Crystal chandeliers cast prisms of light across marble floors. Everything was elegant, expensive, perfect. "We have you in the Cardinale suite, as requested. Very private, away from the main celebrations." "Thank you," Louis managed. "Oh, and Ms. Moretti left something for you." She produced a small velvet box from behind the desk. "Dear, she asked that we give this to you upon arrival." Louis's hands trembled as he took the box. It was light, barely weighing anything. Marcus stood beside him, silent but supportive. "I'll get the bags up to your room," Marcus said quietly. "Take your time." Louis nodded and walked out to the terrace overlooking the lake. He needed air, space, a moment to steady himself before opening whatever Gabriella had sent. He sat on a stone bench beneath a pergola covered in wisteria. For a long moment, he just held the box, afraid of what might be inside. Then, taking a deep breath, he opened it. Inside, nestled on white silk, was a compass. Not just any compass, the compass. The vintage brass one he'd given Gabriella on their first anniversary. He'd found it in an antique shop in London, tarnished and broken. He'd had it restored, the brass polished until it gleamed, the needle remagnetized so it pointed true north again. "For when you're lost," he'd told her, fastening the delicate chain around her neck, "so you can always find your way home to me." She'd cried then, happy tears, and kissed him until they'd both forgotten where they were. That had been the night Louis had first realized he wanted to marry her. Not someday, not eventually, but soon. He'd even looked at rings the following week, though he'd never gotten the chance to buy one. The compass had been returned to him the night they broke up. Gabriella had taken it off with shaking hands and pressed it into his palm. "I can't keep this," she'd whispered. "It doesn't point home anymore." Now, 7 years later, here it was again. Louis turned it over and saw new engraving on the back, at words that hadn't been there before. "Some paths circle back." Gee! His vision blurred. What did this mean? Why return the compass now, on the eve of her wedding to another man? There was a note in the box, too, folded small. "Louis, meet me in the garden maze at sunset. Before everything happens tomorrow, before I can't say these words anymore, we need to talk. Please come alone. This is just between us. I'm sorry for the mystery, but I need to do this face to face." G. Louis checked his watch. 3 hours until sunset. 3 hours to somehow pull himself together. He pocketed the compass and walked through the villa's grounds, trying to distract himself. Everywhere he looked, there were signs of tomorrow's wedding. White roses by the thousands, wrapped around columns and woven into archways. Long tables set up beneath ancient trees, already draped in cream-colored linens. A string quartet rehearsing near the water's edge, their music drifting across the lake like a lament. Someone had put enormous care into planning this wedding. Every detail was thoughtful, elegant, perfect. Louis imagined Gabriella choosing the flowers, tasting the wine, making 1,000 small decisions that would create one perfect day. He found himself near the ceremony site, a clearing overlooking the lake, with an archway covered in roses where Gabriella would stand tomorrow and promise forever to Alessandro Rossi. Beautiful, isn't it? Louis turned to find an elderly woman sitting on a nearby bench. She had silver hair swept into an elegant bun and wore a lavender dress. Her eyes were kind, but sad. "Yes," Louis said. Because what else could he say? "My son is getting married tomorrow." She gestured at the arch. "He's been planning this for months. He's so happy, so in love." But the way she said it didn't sound happy at all. "You don't approve?" The question slipped out before Louis could stop it. The woman tilted her head, studying him. "You're the race car driver, Lewis Hamilton. I recognize you from the photos Alessandro showed me." Louis's stomach dropped. "You're Alessandro's mother, Rosa Rossi." She smiled gently. "And to answer your question, I love my son more than life itself. I want nothing more than his happiness." "But," Louis prompted, sensing there was more. Rosa sighed, looking out at the lake. "But I'm a mother, and mothers see things. I see how Gabriella looks at my son, with fondness, with gratitude, even with love. But not the kind of love that sets your soul on fire. Not the kind that makes you forget your own name when he walks into a room." Louis sat down on the bench, his legs suddenly weak. "My son is wonderful," Rosa continued. "Kind, patient, successful. He's been in love with Gabriella since the day they met. He waited 2 years for her to agree to marry him. 2 years of gentle patience, never pushing, always understanding. He knew she'd been hurt before. He knew there was someone in her past she couldn't quite forget." "He knew about me?" Louis asked hoarsely. "Not your name. Not at first. But he knew." Rosa turned to look at Louis directly. "A month ago, Gabriella woke from a nightmare, crying. Alessandro held her, and she whispered a name in her sleep. Your name. The next morning, he looked you up. See, that's when he realized who you were." Louis felt like he'd been punched. "What did he do?" "He told me the truth, that he was marrying a woman who dreamed about someone else. I asked him why he was going through with it. Do you know what he said?" Louis shook his head, unable to speak. He said, "Because I love her enough to believe that I can make her forget. Because I'll be so present, so constant, so devoted, that eventually her heart will be mine completely." Rosa's eyes glistened with tears. "But that's not how love works, Mr. Hamilton. You can't make someone love you just by being perfect for them. Love isn't logical or fair or sensible." "Why are you telling me this?" Louis asked, though part of him already knew. "Because I love my son, and I don't want him married to a woman who's settling. And he deserves to be someone's first choice, not their consolation prize." Rosa stood, smoothing her dress. "And because young people today are so afraid of risk, so afraid of getting hurt, that they choose comfort over passion. They choose safe over sacred." She placed a weathered hand on Louis's shoulder. "Gabriella asked you here for a reason. My advice? Listen to what she has to say. Really listen, and then be honest with her and with yourself about what you truly want." Rosa walked away, leaving Louis alone with his thoughts and the compass burning a hole in his pocket. He pulled it out and opened it. The needle spun, then settled, pointing steadily north. Or was it pointing toward something else? Someone else? some paths circle back. Louis closed his eyes and made a decision. Whatever Gabriella needed to tell him, see whatever truth she'd been carrying for 7 years, he would face it without fear. No more running. No more putting career above heart. No more letting pride make his choices. If she needed him to watch her marry Alessandro to find peace, he would do it. If she needed him to set her free, he would do that too. But if, and his heart nearly stopped at the possibility, if she needed him to fight for her, to give her a reason not to marry Alessandro, to prove that love could triumph over logic and timing and all the years they'd lost, then he would do that too, with everything he had. The sun began its descent toward the horizon. Soon it would be time to meet Gabriella in the maze. Time to hear the truth. Time to face whatever came next. Louis stood and walked toward the garden, the compass steady in his hand, pointing him toward his past, his future, and the woman who had always been his true north. The garden maze loomed before Louis like a living puzzle, its hedges reaching 12 feet high, blocking out the world beyond. The entrance was marked by 2 stone pillars covered in climbing roses, their perfume thick and sweet in the evening air. Louis checked his watch. 5 minutes until sunset. His heart hammered so hard he could feel it in his throat. He stepped into the maze, and the world narrowed. The hedges created walls of green on either side, muffling sound, creating an intimate corridor that twisted and turned. He followed the path instinctively, left, then right, then left again, as if something deeper than logic was guiding him. The sky above had turned the color of flame, orange and pink and gold, the sun hovering just above the mountains across the lake. Our birds called out their evening songs. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear music from the villa, laughter from wedding guests arriving early. But in the maze, there was only silence and the sound of his footsteps on the gravel path. He turned another corner and found himself in the center. It was a circular clearing, perhaps 20 feet across, with a stone fountain in the middle. Water trickled from the mouth of a carved dolphin into a basin filled with lily pads. Stone benches ringed the space, worn smooth by decades of visitors. And there, standing with her back to him, was Gabriella. She wore a simple white sundress, her dark hair loose and falling past her shoulders. She was looking at the fountain, her posture rigid with tension. Even from behind, Louis could see she was trembling. "Gabriella," he said softly, I'm not wanting to startle her. She turned, and the breath left Louis's body. She was more beautiful than his memories had allowed. 7 years had refined her features, added depth to her eyes, brought a maturity to her face that made her even more striking. But there were also shadows beneath those eyes, and when she smiled, it didn't quite reach them. "You came," she whispered. "Always." The word escaped before Louis could think. "I'll always come when you call." They stood there, 10 feet apart, an ocean of unsaid things between them. Louis wanted to close the distance, to pull her into his arms, to tell her everything he'd been holding inside for 7 years. But he stayed frozen, afraid that one wrong move would shatter whatever fragile moment this was. "Thank you for the compass," he said, pulling it from his pocket. I never thought I'd see it again." Gabriella's eyes filled with tears. "I kept it all these years. I told myself I should throw it away, that holding onto it was keeping me trapped in the past. But I couldn't. Every time I tried, I'd remember the day you gave it to me, and I'd put it back in my drawer." "Why give it back now?" Louis asked, though he was terrified of the answer. She took a step toward him, then stopped, wrapping her arms around herself. "Because tomorrow, when I marry Alessandro, I need to let go of everything that came before. I can't start a marriage while still holding pieces of you." The words hit Louis like a physical blow. So this was it. This was why she'd asked him here, to say goodbye properly, to close the door they'd left open 7 years ago. "I understand," he forced himself to say. You want closure?" "No," Gabriella said sharply, surprising him. "No, Louis, that's not—" She broke off, pressing her hands to her face. When she looked up again, tears were streaming down her cheeks. "I'm not in love with Alessandro." The world tilted. Louis gripped the fountain's edge to steady himself. "What?" "I'm not in love with him," she repeated, the words tumbling out now as if a dam had broken. "I care about him. He's wonderful, kind, everything anyone could want. But I'm not in love with him, and I never have been." "Then why—" Louis started forward, but Gabriella held up her hand. "Let me finish. Please. I've practiced this speech 1,000 times, and if I don't say it now, I never will." Louis nodded, his throat too tight to speak. Gabriella sat on the fountain's edge, and after a moment, Louis joined her, leaving careful space between them, space that felt both necessary and unbearable. "After we ended," Gabriella began, her voice shaking, "I fell apart. Completely. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I'd go through entire surgeries running on autopilot, and afterward, I wouldn't remember anything except your face. My sister Sophia was so worried she moved in with me for 3 months." Louis's hands clenched into fists. He'd known their breakup had hurt her, but hearing the depth of her pain he'd caused, made him want to go back in time and shake his younger self until he understood what he was losing. "I needed to get away," Gabriella continued, "so I signed up for Doctors Without Borders. I went to Syria, then Somalia, then Sudan, places where the suffering was so enormous that my own pain felt small by comparison. In places where I worked 18-hour days and fell into bed too exhausted to dream." "That's where you met Alessandro," Louis said quietly, remembering what Rosa had told him. "Yes, he was running supply operations for an NGO, getting medical equipment through war zones. We worked together for 6 months before he asked me to dinner. I said no at first. I wasn't ready, but he was patient, so patient." Gabriella's voice cracked. "When we finally did go out, he was everything you weren't. Steady, present, reliable. He never canceled plans. He never put work before me. He remembered every small detail I mentioned." Each word felt like a knife, but Louis forced himself to listen. This was her truth, and he owed her that much. "We dated for 2 years before he proposed. 2 years of him being perfect. He and me trying desperately to feel what I was supposed to feel." Gabriella turned to face Louis fully now. "Do you know what I realized? Loving someone who's perfect is exhausting. Because there's no reason not to love them. So when you don't feel that spark, that fire, that thing that makes your heart race, you start wondering what's wrong with you." "There's nothing wrong with you," Louis said fiercely. "Isn't there?" Gabriella's laugh was broken. "A good man loves me. A man who would never hurt me or disappoint me or choose anything over me. And I can't love him back the way he deserves. What does that say about me? It says you're human. It says love isn't a logical equation where you add up someone's qualities and produce a feeling." Louis shifted closer, unable to help himself. "Gabriella, if you don't love him, why are you marrying him?" She closed her eyes, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "Because I'm 37 years old, Louis. Because my biological clock isn't just ticking, it's screaming. Because Alessandro wants children, wants the family I've always dreamed of. Because if I don't do this now, if I keep waiting for a feeling that might never come, I'll wake up at 50 with nothing but regrets and an empty apartment." "So you're settling," Louis said, and the words came out harder than he meant them to. Gabriella's eyes snapped open. "Yes, I'm settling. I'm choosing reality over fantasy. I'm choosing a man who's here, who's present, who will be a wonderful father and a faithful husband. I'm choosing the life I can actually have instead of the one I used to dream about." "And what life did you dream about?" Louis asked, his heart in his throat. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and in her eyes Louis saw everything. The love that had never died, the pain that had never healed, the future they'd both lost 7 years ago. "You," she whispered. "I dreamed about you, coming home to you, building a life with you, growing old with you. But that was never going to happen, was it? Because you had racing, and racing was always going to come first." "Not anymore," Louis said urgently, taking her hands before he could stop himself. They were cold, trembling. "Gabriella, I'm not the same person I was 7 years ago. I've changed. I finally understand what I lost, and I'm ready." "It's too late, Louis." She pulled her hands away gently but firmly. 7 years too late. But I can't risk my heart on ready now when I needed ready then. I can't build my life on a maybe when I have a certainty waiting for me. But you're not in love with him." "No," she agreed, her voice barely above a whisper. "But love fades anyway, doesn't it? People say it does. They say passion burns out, and what's left is companionship, partnership, comfort. Maybe I'm just skipping ahead to the part that lasts." Louis felt like he was drowning. "That's not love, Gabriella. That's giving up." "Then call it giving up." She stood abruptly, pacing the small clearing. "Call it whatever you want. But tomorrow, I'm marrying Alessandro, and I need you to understand why. I need you to know it's not because I don't love you. It's because I do, and it nearly destroyed me once. I can't survive that again." The sun had set completely now. The sky had turned from gold to purple to deep blue, and the first stars were appearing. In the gathering darkness, Louis could barely see Gabriella's face, but he could hear the tears in her voice. "Is that why you asked me here?" he asked. "To explain why you're choosing someone else?" "I asked you here because I needed to see you one more time before I close this chapter forever." Gabriella's voice broke completely. "I needed to stand next to you and feel if there was any chance my heart could let you go. If seeing you again would prove that what we had was just nostalgia, just a memory I'd built up too much in my mind." "And?" Louis stood too, moving toward her. "What did you feel when you saw me?" She laughed through her tears, a sound caught between joy and despair. "Everything. I felt everything. My heart recognized you before my mind caught up. It was like 7 years vanished, and we were right back in that moment before everything fell apart." "Then don't marry him." Louis closed the distance between them, his hands hovering near her face, but not quite touching. "Gabriella, if you still feel this, if your heart still knows me, then don't marry him. Give us another chance. Let me prove I've changed. Let me show you that I can be the man you needed 7 years ago." For one breathless moment, he thought she might say yes. Her eyes searched his face, and he saw the war happening behind them. Hope battling fear. Love fighting logic. Then she stepped back, and Louis felt his heart crack clean in half. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. But I can't. I've made my choice. And Alessandro has been planning this wedding for 8 months, His family is here. My family is here. Everyone is expecting. Forget what everyone expects, Louis said desperately. This is your life, Gabriella. Your one life. Don't waste it being safe when you could be happy. And what if choosing you doesn't make me happy? She shot back. What if we try again, and 3 months in, you get offered some amazing racing opportunity, and suddenly, I'm second again? What if the pattern repeats because that's who you are? Someone who can't help but chase the next victory. That's not who I am anymore. How do I know that? Gabriella's voice rose. How do I trust that? You hurt me, Louis. You broke my heart into so many pieces it took years to put back together. And it's still not whole. There are cracks everywhere. And I'm terrified that if I let you close again, you'll shatter me completely. They stood facing each other in the darkness, both crying now, both breaking. I need to go, Gabriella finally said. I have the rehearsal dinner in an hour, and I can't fall apart right now. Tomorrow is happening. The wedding is happening, and I need you to respect that. Gabriella. Please, Louis, if you ever loved me, let me do this. Let me marry Alessandro and build the life I've planned. Don't make this harder than it already is. She turned to leave, but Louis called out one more question, the one that had been burning in his chest since he first read her note. You said there was something you needed to tell me. Something from 7 years ago. What was it? Gabriella stopped, her back still to him. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then, and so quietly, Louis almost missed it. It doesn't matter now. Some truths are better left buried. And then she was gone, disappearing into the maze, leaving Louis alone in the darkness, with a compass that pointed nowhere and a heart that felt like it was bleeding out. He sank onto the fountain's edge and let himself break. 7 years of holding it together. 7 years of pretending he was fine. 7 years of buried grief. It all came flooding out. He'd come here hoping for closure or redemption or maybe a miracle. Instead, he was watching the woman he loved choose safety over passion, comfort over risk, someone else over him. And the worst part? He understood why. He'd given her every reason not to trust him. He'd taught her that loving him meant suffering, and now she was choosing differently. Louis pulled out the compass and opened it. In the moonlight, he read the engraving again. Some paths circle back. But maybe this one didn't. Maybe this was where the path ended, in a maze, in the dark, with the sound of his own breaking heart, the only companion. Tomorrow, he would watch Gabriella marry Alessandro Rossi. Tomorrow, he would smile and clap and pretend his world wasn't ending. Tomorrow, he would let her go. But tonight, he let himself grieve for everything they'd been and everything they'd never be. Louis didn't know how long he sat in the maze. Time felt broken, meaningless. Eventually, the cold seeped through his clothes and the night sounds, owls hunting, wind through leaves, distant music from the villa, pulled him back to himself. He made his way out of the maze, his legs moving on autopilot. The villa glowed with warm light. He could hear voices from the terrace where the rehearsal dinner was happening. Laughter, champagne glasses clinking, the sounds of celebration. He couldn't go near it, couldn't risk seeing Gabriella surrounded by Alessandro's family, playing the role of happy bride-to-be, while her eyes held the same devastation he felt. Instead, Louis slipped through a side entrance and took the stairs to his suite. The Cardinale suite was beautiful. High ceilings with frescoed angels, antique furniture, windows overlooking the lake. It was wasted on him. He barely saw it. Marcus was sitting in the suite's living room when Louis entered, scrolling through his phone. He took one look at Louis's face and set the phone down. "That bad?" Marcus asked quietly. Louis walked to the window without answering. Below, and he could see part of the terrace where the dinner was happening. White lights strung between trees. A long table filled with people. He couldn't make out individuals from this distance, which was probably a blessing. "She's not in love with him," Louis said finally, his voice hollow. "Alessandro. She's not in love with him. She told me that." Marcus stood. "Then why is she—" "Because she's afraid. Because I hurt her 7 years ago, and she can't trust that I won't do it again. Because she wants children, and stability, and a life she can predict." Louis pressed his forehead against the cool glass. "Because I taught her that loving me means pain." "Louis, that's not—" "It is." Louis turned to face his friend. "It's exactly fair. I chose racing over her again and again. I missed her birthday. I canceled plans. I made promises I couldn't keep. And when she finally said she couldn't take it anymore, I let her walk away. I was too proud to chase her, too convinced that my career was more important than one relationship." "You were young. You were focused on—" "On the wrong things," Louis interrupted. "I was focused on winning championships, breaking records, proving myself. And I did all that. I have the trophies and the titles and the legacy. But Marcus, what good is any of it when I go home to an empty apartment and realize the person I most wanted to share it with is gone?" Marcus moved to the bar and poured 2 glasses of whiskey. He handed one to Louis. "So what are you going to do?" Louis took the glass but didn't drink. "What she asked. I'm going to let her marry Alessandro. I'm going to watch and smile and pretend I'm fine with it. Because that's what you do when you love someone. You let them make their own choices, even when those choices break you." "That's noble and all," Marcus said carefully. "But is it what you really want to do? What I want doesn't matter anymore." "Doesn't it?" Marcus sat on the arm of the sofa. "Louis, I've known you for 12 years. I've watched you face down other drivers at 200 miles per hour without flinching. I've seen you make split-second decisions that mean the difference between victory and death. You're not someone who gives up when things get hard. This is different." "How?" "Because racing is about me," Louis said, frustration creeping into his voice. "My choices, my risks, my consequences. But this is about Gabriella. Her life, her happiness. So who am I to stand in the way of that, just because I finally figured out what matters?" "You're the man she's still in love with," Marcus said bluntly. "Or did you miss that part?" Louis's hand tightened around the glass. "She didn't say she was still in love with me." "She didn't have to. You don't fall apart in a maze with someone you're over." Marcus leaned forward. "Look, I'm not saying crash the wedding like some romantic comedy, but maybe there's a middle ground between giving up completely and making a scene. Maybe she needs to know that you're serious about changing, that this isn't just panic at seeing her again." "And how do I prove that? I've been here less than a day." "Then make it count," Marcus said simply. "You have tonight and tomorrow morning before the ceremony. Use that time." Louis finally took a drink, to the whiskey burning his throat. "She told me not to make this harder than it already is." "She also invited you here in the first place," Marcus pointed out. "Why do that if she really just wanted closure? She could have written you a letter, could have moved on without ever seeing you again, but she asked you to come. There's a reason for that." Louis thought about Gabriella's tears in the maze, the way her voice had broken when she said she'd never stopped loving him. The compass she'd kept for 7 years before returning it. The cryptic message about truth that needed to be told. She said there was something she needed to tell me. Louis said slowly. Something from 7 years ago. But then she said it didn't matter anymore. That some truths were better left buried. Marcus's eyebrows rose. See, and you're not curious what that is? Of course I am. But she made it clear she didn't want to talk about it. Or maybe she was scared. Maybe she needs you to push a little, to show her you're not going to run away when things get complicated. Louis walked back to the window. The rehearsal dinner was still going, though people were starting to disperse. He watched the figures moving below, wondering which one was Gabriella, whether she was thinking about him or successfully pretending the last hour hadn't happened. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Are you okay? I'm sorry for how I left things in the maze. I didn't know what else to say. G. Louis stared at the message. She was reaching out. Even after telling him to let her go, she was checking on him. What do I say? He asked Marcus, on showing him the phone. The truth. Always the truth. Louis typed slowly. I'm not okay. But I will be. Thank you for being honest with me in the maze. I know that wasn't easy. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, nothing about this is easy. I wish things were different. I wish we had different timing, different lives, different choices behind us. Louis's fingers moved before his brain could stop them. We can't change the past, but the future isn't written yet. A long pause. Then, Louis, please don't. Tomorrow is happening. I've made my choice. Have you? Or have you made the safe choice and convinced yourself it's the right one? This time the pause stretched so long Louis thought she wouldn't respond. When she finally did, the message was short. Good night, Louis. I'll see you tomorrow. He sank onto the sofa, 2 phones still in his hand. Marcus sat beside him. She's terrified, Louis said, and I don't blame her. I gave her every reason to be. So prove her wrong, not with words, with actions. How? What action can I possibly take that won't seem like I'm trying to manipulate her or pressure her? Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then, what if you showed her you're serious about the changes you talked about? You said you're different now, that racing isn't everything anymore. Have you actually done anything to prove that? Louis opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. What had he done? He'd come to Italy. He'd attended when she asked. But those were reactive moves, not proactive ones. They didn't prove anything except that he could show up. What are you thinking? Marcus asked, recognizing the look on Louis's face. Says something crazy, Louis said slowly. Something that's either the bravest thing I've ever done or the stupidest. I'm listening. Louis stood and began pacing, the idea taking shape in his mind. What if I announced my retirement from Formula One publicly before the wedding? Marcus's eyes widened. You're serious? I'm 40 years old. I've won everything there is to win. Every year, I tell myself, just one more season. But why? To prove what? To chase what? I've already proven myself. The only thing I'm doing now is staying in motion because I'm afraid to stop. Louis, you can't retire just to win a woman back. It's not just for her, Louis interrupted. It's for me, too. I'm tired, Marcus. Tired of hotel rooms and airports. Tired of measuring my worth by lap times and podium finishes. Yet tired of being Lewis Hamilton the driver instead of Louis the person. He stopped pacing, facing his friend. Gabriella was right 7 years ago. Racing consumed me. It still does. And if I'm serious about changing, about building a different kind of life, then I need to actually change, not just promise to. And if you do this, and she still marries Alessandro? The question hung in the air. Lewis felt the weight of it, the risk. If he retired from Formula One and Gabriella still chose Alessandro, he'd be left with neither his career nor the woman he loved. But maybe that was the point. Maybe real change required real risk. Then at least I'll have tried, Lewis said quietly. At least I'll have shown her, and myself, that I'm serious, that I'm willing to bet everything on a different kind of future. Marcus studied him for a long moment. You're really going to do this? I think I am. Tonight? Lewis checked his watch. Nearly midnight. No, tomorrow morning. I'll have my publicist release a statement at sunrise before the wedding. That way, Gabriella will know before she walks down the aisle. Lewis, think about this. Really think. You're talking about ending a 20-year career on the chance, just the chance, that a woman might change her mind. I'm talking about ending a career that's run its course, Lewis corrected. The woman I love is just helping me see that clearly. Win or lose, Marcus, I need to do this. I need to stop defining myself by racing and figure out who I am without it. Marcus nodded slowly. Then call your publicist. Wake them up if you have to. But Lewis, make sure the statement comes from your heart. Don't make it about Gabriella. Make it about you, about growth, about choosing a different path. Otherwise, it'll look like manipulation. Lewis pulled out his phone and found his publicist's number. His finger hovered over the call button. This was it. Once he made this call, there was no taking it back. The press would explode. His team would be shocked. Fans would have 1,000 opinions. His legacy would be complicated by this choice. But none of that mattered as much as the truth burning in his chest. Racing had been his life, but it couldn't be his whole life anymore. Not if he wanted to be the kind of man who deserved a second chance. He pressed call. Lewis. His publicist's voice was groggy with sleep. Do you know what time it is? James, I need you to prepare a statement for immediate release. Or tomorrow morning at sunrise? A statement about what? Lewis took a deep breath. About my retirement from Formula One. Silence. Then, Lewis, are you drunk? Stone cold sober, and I've never been more certain of anything. Lewis walked to the window again, looking out at the dark lake, at the mountains beyond, at the star-filled sky. Somewhere out there, Gabriella was lying awake, probably unable to sleep, probably trying to convince herself that tomorrow was the right choice. Are you absolutely sure about this? James asked, fully awake now. Write this down, Lewis said, and his voice was steady, clear, final. Lewis Hamilton announces his retirement from Formula One racing, effective immediately. As he dictated the statement, words about gratitude and growth, about 20 years of incredible experiences and the desire to start a new chapter. Lewis felt something shift inside him. Fear, yes, but also relief, certainty, peace. He was done running from life by staying in constant motion, done hiding from himself in the roar of engines and the rush of victory. Tomorrow, Gabriella would walk down the aisle, and whether she walked toward Alessandro or had the courage to stop and change direction, Lewis would have done everything in his power to show her the truth. He'd changed. He was ready, and he was willing to risk everything to prove it. Lewis hadn't slept. He'd spent the night alternating between staring at the ceiling and standing at the window, watching the sky slowly lighten from black to navy to the soft pink of dawn. At 5:47 a.m., his phone buzzed. On a message from James. Statement goes live in 3 minutes. Are you absolutely sure? Last chance to stop this. Lewis typed back, I'm sure. Send it. At 5:50 a.m., the news broke. Lewis Hamilton, 7-time Formula One world champion, was retiring from racing effective immediately. His phone exploded. Calls from team principals, fellow drivers, journalists, sponsors. He silenced it all and walked out onto his balcony. The Villa d'Este was waking up. Staff moved through the gardens, making final preparations for the wedding. The ceremony wasn't until 3 p.m., but already the air hummed with anticipation. Marcus joined him on the balcony, 2 cups of coffee in hand. It's done. Twitter is losing its mind. Formula One forums are melting down. Your retirement is trending worldwide. Good, Lewis said quietly. You sure about that? No, but I'm sure I needed to do it. They stood in silence, watching the sun climb higher. Lewis wondered if Gabriella had seen the news yet. Was she awake? Was she reading the statement right now? Did she understand what he was trying to tell her? His silenced phone kept lighting up with notifications. He finally glanced at it and saw hundreds of messages, but only one mattered. From Gabriella. What did you do? His heart pounded as he typed, what I should have done 7 years ago. Chose you over racing. 3 dots appeared immediately. Lewis, you can't retire from Formula One because of me. That's insane. I didn't retire because of you. I retired because of me. You just helped me see that it was time. A longer pause. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just know that I meant every word in that statement. Racing was my life. But it's not my whole life anymore. I'm ready for something different. Someone different. If you'll have me. The dots appeared and disappeared 3 times. Finally, Lewis, I'm getting married in 8 hours. Are you? Really? Or are you going through the motions of something you committed to before you knew you had another choice? This time, no response came. Lewis stared at his phone for 5 minutes, then 10, then 15. Nothing. She's not answering, he told Marcus. Give her time. You just blew up your entire career. That's a lot to process. Lewis set his phone down and tried to breathe normally. What had he done? He'd just walked away from Formula One, the sport that defined him, that had been his entire identity since he was 8 years old, and he had no idea if it would matter. I need to get out of here, Lewis said suddenly. I can't just sit in this room waiting. Where do you want to go? Anywhere. The town. A drive. I don't care. I just need to move. They walked down to the villa's parking area. Lewis had arranged for a rental car. Nothing flashy, just a simple Alfa Romeo. They drove into the small town of Cernobbio, winding through narrow streets, past shops just opening for the day. Lewis parked near the waterfront, and they walked in silence. The lake was perfectly still, reflecting the mountains like a mirror. Boats bobbed at their moorings. Old men sat at cafe tables reading newspapers, probably reading about his retirement right now. Do you regret it? Marcus asked. The retirement? Lewis considered the question honestly. Ask me again tomorrow. Right now? But I'm too numb to feel anything except fear. Fear of what? That I've made the biggest gesture of my life, and it won't be enough. That Gabriella will marry Alessandro anyway, and I'll be left with nothing. No racing career, no woman I love, just an empty apartment and a lot of what-ifs. Or, Marcus said carefully, she could stop the wedding. She could choose you. And then you'd have everything that actually matters. That's what terrifies me most, Lewis admitted. Hope. Because hope can break you worse than anything else. They bought coffee from a small cafe and sat on a bench overlooking the water. Lewis's phone continued to buzz with messages and calls. His mother, his brother, his team, Everyone wanting to know why, asking if he was okay, some angry, some supportive, all shocked. One message stood out. "I from Alessandro's number. I saw your statement. Elegant move. But she's still marrying me in 6 hours. Sometimes timing is everything, Hamilton. You had your chance." Lewis stared at the message, anger flaring in his chest. But underneath the anger was something else. Recognition. Alessandro wasn't wrong. Lewis had his chance 7 years ago, and he'd blown it. Did he really have the right to show up now and disrupt Alessandro's life? But then he thought about Rosa's words in the garden. He deserves to be someone's first choice, not their consolation prize. Alessandro deserved honesty. So did Gabriella. And the honest truth was that she was about to marry a man she didn't love, while still in love with someone else. Lewis deleted the message without responding, and stood. "We should head back. I need to get ready." "You're really going to the wedding?" "I told her I would be there, and I keep my promises now." They drove back to the Villa d'Este in silence. The grounds had been transformed. White flowers everywhere, chairs arranged in perfect rows overlooking the lake, an arch covered in roses where Gabriella would stand and make vows she didn't mean. Lewis's stomach churned. He went to his suite and stared at his reflection in the mirror. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, stubble he hadn't bothered to shave, the weight of sleepless night evident in every line of his face. He showered and dressed in the navy suit he'd brought, taking care with each movement, trying to armor himself for what was coming. His hands shook as he tied his tie. Another message from Gabriella. "I read your full statement 3 times. It was beautiful. But Lewis, you can't build your future around me. What if this doesn't work? What if we try again and fail? You'll resent me for the career you gave up." Lewis typed carefully. "I'm not building my future around you. I'm building it for me, for the man I want to be. But I'd be lying if I said I don't hope you're part of that future. The choice is yours, Gabriella. It always has been. I'm scared. So am I. But being scared is better than being safe, but miserable. How do I know you won't hurt me again?" Lewis stared at that question for a long time. How could he promise that? How could anyone promise never to hurt someone they loved? People hurt each other. It was part of loving deeply, risking deeply. "I can't promise I'll never hurt you," he typed. "But I can promise I'll never stop choosing you. I can promise that if I make a mistake, I'll own it and work to fix it. I can promise that you'll never be second place again. And I can promise that whatever we build together will be worth the risk." The dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Then, "I need to finish getting ready. I'll see you soon." Lewis sat on the edge of the bed, phone in his hands, and let the reality wash over him. In 2 hours, the woman he loved would walk down an aisle, and he still had no idea if she'd walk all the way to the end. Marcus knocked on the door at 2:30 p.m. "It's time." Lewis stood, adjusted his tie one final time, and took a deep breath. Whatever happened in the next few hours would define the rest of his life. They walked down to the ceremony site together. Guests were already gathering, elegant people in expensive clothes. He's speaking Italian and English in hushed, excited tones. Several recognized Lewis and whispered to each other. A few pointed. One person actually gasped. He ignored them all and found a seat in the back row as planned. He wanted to be present but not obtrusive. There for Gabriella, but not making this about himself. The day was absurdly perfect. Clear blue sky, gentle breeze carrying the scent of roses. the lake sparkling like something from a painting. It was the kind of day people dreamed about for their wedding. Louis felt sick. The string quartet began playing soft prelude music. More guests arrived. Louis recognized some of Gabriella's family from photos she'd shown him years ago. Her father, stern and proud. Her mother, elegant in a champagne-colored dress. Her sister, Sophia, who kept glancing back at Louis with an unreadable expression. At 2:55, Alessandro appeared with his best man. He looked every inch the perfect groom, handsome, composed, smiling. He took his place under the rose-covered arch and straightened his tie. The quartet changed their tune. Everyone stood. First came the bridesmaids, 4 women in soft blue dresses, walking in pairs down the white runner that had been laid through the grass. They looked happy, excited, unaware of the drama churning beneath the surface of this beautiful day. Then the music changed again. The wedding march. Every head turned. And there she was. Gabriella appeared on her father's arm, and Louis forgot how to breathe. She was radiant in a lace gown that caught the sunlight, her dark hair swept up with small flowers woven through it, a veil trailing behind her like mist. She looked like every dream Louis had ever had and every regret he'd ever carried. But more than her beauty, Louis noticed other things. The rigid set of her shoulders, the practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, the way her hand clutched her father's arm like a lifeline, the slight hesitation in each step, as if her body was fighting her mind's decision. She walked down the aisle, and Louis's heart hammered against his ribs. She was really doing this. She was really going to marry Alessandro. Her eyes swept the crowd, and for just a heartbeat, they found Louis's. Something passed between them, a flash of panic, of longing, of desperate question. Then she looked away and continued walking. Each step felt like a nail in Louis's coffin. She reached the halfway point, 3/4. She was almost to the altar now, and almost to the point of no return. Her father handed her over to Alessandro with a smile. Alessandro took her hands, his face full of love and hope and trust. The officiant stepped forward. "Dearly beloved," he began, his voice carrying across the perfect afternoon, "we are gathered here today to witness and celebrate the union of Gabriella Rose Moretti and Alessandro Marco Rossi in holy matrimony." Louis's hands gripped the chair in front of him. This was happening. This was really happening. The officiant continued with traditional words about love and commitment, about 2 lives becoming one. Louis barely heard them. He was too focused on Gabriella, on the way she swayed slightly, on how pale she looked beneath her makeup. "Marriage is not to be entered into lightly," the officiant said, "but with careful consideration and respect." Louis thought about standing up, thought about objecting, about making a scene, about proving every romantic comedy stereotype true. But that wasn't what Gabriella needed. She didn't need him to rescue her. She needed to rescue herself. "If anyone here knows of any reason why this couple should not be married," the officiant continued, reaching the traditional moment, "speak now or forever. Hold your peace." Silence. Louis held his breath. No one moved. The officiant smiled and moved on. "Then we proceed. Alessandro, do you take Gabriella to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do," Alessandro said, his voice strong and sure. "And Gabriella, do you take Alessandro to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" The silence stretched. Gabriella stood frozen, staring at Alessandro. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. "Take your time," the officiant said kindly. Gabriella tried again. "Alessandro," her voice cracked. A tear rolled down her cheek. "You are the kindest man I've ever known." But she didn't say, "I do." She just stood there, crying, and Louis saw the exact moment Alessandro understood what was happening. "Gabriella?" Alessandro's voice was gentle but edged with fear. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. But in the silent garden, everyone heard. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Alessandro's face went pale. "What are you saying?" "I can't," Gabriella said, louder now, tears streaming down her face. "I can't do this. I thought I could. I thought choosing safety over passion was mature, was smart, was right. But standing here, about to promise you forever, all I can think about is—" She stopped, looking out at the guests, her eyes searching until they landed on Louis. "Is that I'm still in love with someone else," she finished. "And you deserve better than that, Alessandro. You deserve someone who loves you the way you deserve to be loved. Completely. Without reservation. Without ghosts." The garden erupted in shocked whispers. Alessandro dropped her hands, stepping back as if burned. His mother stood, hand over her mouth. Gabriella's father started forward, fury on his face. But Louis only had eyes for Gabriella. She's standing in her wedding dress under an arch of roses, choosing courage over comfort, truth over convenience, her own heart over everyone else's expectations. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. The silence that followed Gabriella's confession lasted only seconds, but it felt like hours. Then chaos erupted. "Gabriella, what are you doing?" her father shouted, pushing through guests toward the altar. Alessandro's mother was crying. His sisters surrounded him, their faces twisted in shock and anger. Friends whispered frantically to each other. Someone's phone was out, probably already live-streaming this disaster to the internet. But Alessandro himself just stood there, looking at Gabriella with an expression that broke Louis's heart. Not anger, but deep, profound sadness. And the look of a man who'd known this was coming but had hoped against hope it wouldn't. "It's the race car driver," Alessandro said quietly, though his voice carried across the suddenly silent garden. "The one you never talked about. The one whose name you whispered in your sleep." Gabriella nodded, tears streaming freely now, her makeup ruined, her carefully constructed composure completely shattered. "I'm so sorry, Alessandro. You deserve so much better than this, better than me." "I thought—" Alessandro's voice broke. "I thought if I loved you enough, I could make you forget him. I thought I could be enough." "You were," Gabriella insisted, taking a step toward him but stopping when he flinched back. "You've always been enough. You're wonderful. This isn't about you being insufficient. It's about me being broken in a way you can't fix." "Broken?" Alessandro's laugh was hollow. "You're not broken, Gabriella. You're just in love with someone else. You always have been." He looked past her, directly at Louis. "Is that him? In the back?" Every head turned. Louis felt 100 pairs of eyes on him, judgmental, curious, angry. He stood slowly, meeting Alessandro's gaze. He owed the man that much. "Yes," Gabriella whispered. "That's Louis." Alessandro stared at Louis for a long moment, and Louis saw recognition flicker across his face. Not just recognition of who Louis was, but understanding of everything Gabriella had been holding back. Everything she'd been trying to convince herself didn't matter. "Does he love you?" Alessandro asked, still looking at Louis. Gabriella started, but Alessandro cut her off. I'm asking him." Alessandro's voice was harder now, Hamilton, do you love her? Louis moved forward without thinking, his feet carrying him down the aisle. Guests parted like water. He reached the altar and stood facing Alessandro, these two men who loved the same woman, separated by 3 feet and everything that could have been. Yes, Louis said simply, I love her. I've loved her for 8 years, and I'll love her for the rest of my life. And 7 years ago? Did you love her then? Louis flinched, but held Alessandro's gaze. Yes, but I was too stupid and too selfish to choose her over my career. I let her go, and it's the biggest regret of my life. And now? Alessandro's jaw was tight. Now that you've won your championships and achieved your dreams, now you want her back? And now that it's convenient for you? It's not convenient, Louis said, his voice rough with emotion. It's terrifying. I retired from Formula One this morning, gave up everything I've worked for my entire life, because I finally understood that none of it matters without her. But Alessandro, I'm not here to take her from you. She made her own choice. I'm just here because she asked me to come. Alessandro turned to Gabriella. Is that true? You asked him to come to our wedding? Gabriella nodded, her face crumpling. I thought if I saw him again, I could prove to myself that what we had was just nostalgia, that I'd built it up in my memory into something bigger than it was. I thought seeing him would free me to love you the way you deserve. And did it? Alessandro asked, though he already knew the answer. No, Gabriella whispered. It made everything worse. It made me realize I've been lying to myself for 2 years, lying to you. I convinced myself that steady love was enough, that I didn't need passion or fire, or that feeling of my heart racing when someone walks in the room. But I was wrong, Alessandro. I was so wrong. So you humiliate me in front of everyone? His voice finally rose, anger bleeding through the hurt. You wait until we're at the altar, in front of our families and friends, to decide you can't marry me? I know, Gabriella sobbed. I know it's horrible. I know you'll never forgive me. But what was worse, stopping now or marrying you while in love with someone else? What would have hurt you more? This or 10 years of a marriage, where you always wondered why I didn't look at you the way I should? Alessandro's hands clenched at his sides, and for a moment, Louis thought he might throw a punch. Wouldn't blame him if he did. But then Alessandro's shoulders sagged, and when he spoke again, his voice was defeated. I knew, he said quietly. I've known for months. Maybe I've always known. I saw the way you'd space out sometimes, like part of you was somewhere else. I noticed how you never talked about your past relationships. I felt you hold something back, even in our most intimate moments. Then why did you? Gabriella started. Because I loved you, Alessandro interrupted. Because I thought love could overcome anything. Because I was arrogant enough to believe I could make you happy through sheer force of will and devotion. He looked at Louis again. But I can't compete with a ghost. And I can't compete with the kind of love that makes someone walk away from their entire identity. He stepped forward and gently touched Gabriella's cheek, a gesture of goodbye so tender that Louis had to look away. Be brave, Alessandro said to her. Not for him, but for yourself. Stop running from what scares you. Then he turned and walked down the aisle with quiet dignity, his family scrambling to follow, voices raised in Italian, full of anger and confusion and grief. The exodus began. Half the guests followed Alessandro's family, shooting dirty looks at Gabriella as they passed. Her father reached the altar, his face purple with rage. How dare you, he hissed. How dare you disgrace this family? Do you know what you've done? The Rossi family will never forgive this insult." "Papa," Gabriella started, but he cut her off. "No! You threw away a good man, a man who loved you, who would have given you everything. And for what? A race car driver who wasn't there when you needed him?" He jabbed a finger at Louis. "7 years ago, you broke my daughter's heart. I held her while she cried for months. And now you show up here and destroy her wedding?" "Papa, stop!" Sophia, Gabriella's sister, stepped between them. "This is not his fault. Gabby made her own choice." "A stupid choice!" their father roared. "A brave one," Sophia shot back. "She had the courage to admit the truth instead of living a lie. Would you rather she married Alessandro while in love with Louis? Would that have been better?" Louis stood silent through all of this, letting Gabriella's family work through their shock and anger. He knew anything he said would only make things worse. This was Gabriella's moment, her battle to fight. Gabriella's mother approached, her face unreadable. She looked at her daughter for a long moment, then at Louis, then back to Gabriella. "Are you sure?" she asked quietly. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" "No," Gabriella admitted, her voice shaking. "I'm terrified. But I'm sure that I couldn't marry Alessandro while feeling this way. That much I know is true." Her mother nodded slowly. "Then you did the right thing, even if you did it in the worst possible way." She turned to their father. "Marco, we need to go. We need to give Gabriella space to figure this out." "I won't," he started, but his wife's look silenced him. "Now, Marco." They left, taking most of the remaining guests with them. Soon the garden was nearly empty except for Gabriella, Louis, Marcus, Sophia, and a handful of staff who were pretending not to watch the drama unfold. Gabriella stood under the rose arch in her ruined wedding dress, mascara running down her face, flowers wilting in her hair. She looked destroyed and beautiful, and brave all at once. Sophia hugged her sister tightly. "That was either the bravest thing you've ever done, or the craziest," she whispered loud enough for Louis to hear. "I'm voting for brave." "Thank you," Gabriella said into her sister's shoulder. Sophia pulled back and looked at Louis. "You better be worth this. You better be worth what she just gave up." "I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be," Louis promised. Sophia nodded, then turned back to Gabriella. "Call me later. We'll talk. For now, I think you two need to figure some things out." She walked away, and leaving Louis and Gabriella alone in the garden full of decorations for a wedding that would never be. They stood there, 5 feet apart, not knowing what to say or do. The magnitude of what had just happened settled over them like a weight. "I can't believe you stopped the wedding," Louis finally said. "I can't believe you retired from Formula One," Gabriella countered. A strangled laugh escaped Louis. "We're both insane." "Completely," she agreed, and then she started laughing too. The kind of laughter that borders on hysteria, that comes from relief and terror and the absolute absurdity of the situation. They laughed until they were both crying, until they couldn't breathe, until they collapsed onto the front row of chairs, their shoulders touching. When the laughter finally subsided, Gabriella turned to face Louis. "Oh, what do we do now?" "I don't know," Louis admitted. "I've never blown up my life quite this spectacularly before." "Me neither, though I think I'm winning in the spectacular destruction category." "It's not a competition. If it were, I'd definitely have the lead." They fell silent again. Around them, staff had begun quietly dismantling the wedding decorations, a practical reminder that life moved forward even when everything fell apart. "Louis," Gabriella said softly, That thing I said I needed to tell you. The truth from 7 years ago. Louis's heart rate picked up. You said it didn't matter anymore. I was wrong. It does matter. It always mattered. She took a shaky breath. But I can't tell you here. Not like this. Surrounded by the ruins of the life I almost chose. Can we go somewhere? Somewhere private? Louis stood and offered his hand. Anywhere you want. She took his hand, her fingers cold and trembling in his, and stood. Her wedding dress was heavy, impractical for walking, but she gathered up the skirt and kicked off her heels. The dock, she said, where we talked last night. That's where I need to tell you. They walked through the gardens barefoot, Gabriella in her wedding dress and Louis in his suit. Two people who'd just detonated their lives and were walking toward an uncertain future, hand in hand. Marcus watched them go, then pulled out his phone. Louis heard him quietly saying, "Yeah, it happened. She stopped the wedding. No, I don't know what happens next. But knowing Louis, it's going to be one hell of a story." They reached the dock as the sun began its descent toward the mountains. The lake was calm, perfectly still, reflecting the sky like glass. Gabriella sat on the edge, her wedding dress pooling around her, and patted the space beside her. Louis sat, and they dangled their feet over the water, not quite touching but close enough to feel each other's warmth. "Whatever you need to tell me," Louis said, "I'm ready to hear it." Gabriella looked out at the lake, at the mountains, at anywhere but Louis's face. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. 7 years ago, when I walked away from you in the rain, I was pregnant." The world stopped. Louis heard the words, but couldn't process them. Pregnant. 7 years ago. Pregnant. "What?" he managed to choke out. And Gabriella finally turned to face him, tears streaming down her face, carrying a secret she'd held for 7 years. "I was 6 weeks pregnant when we broke up. And there's something else you need to know about what happened after." Louis couldn't breathe. The world had narrowed to Gabriella's tear-stained face, and those impossible words hanging in the air between them. Pregnant. She'd been pregnant. "I don't," he started, but his voice failed. He tried again. "You were pregnant? With my child?" Gabriella nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I found out 2 days after you missed my birthday dinner. 2 days after I'd already decided I couldn't do it anymore, that I needed to walk away. And then I took that test and saw those 2 pink lines. And suddenly, everything was more complicated." Louis's hands were shaking. He pressed them against the dock, trying to ground himself. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you—" He couldn't finish the sentence. His throat had closed completely. "Because I was angry," Gabriella said, her voice breaking. "And hurt. And I knew if I told you, you'd come back. You'd propose out of obligation, not love. You'd give up racing because you had to, not because you wanted to. And I couldn't. I couldn't be the reason you resented your life. Gabriella, that's not—" "Let me finish," she interrupted, her voice firmer now. "Please. I've been carrying this for 7 years. I need to say it all." Louis nodded, unable to speak anyway. His mind was reeling. A child. They'd had a child, or could have had, or he didn't even know what question to ask first. Gabriella picked up a stone and turned it over in her hands, focusing on it instead of Louis's face. "I was 6 weeks along when we broke up. Oh, I spent a week in shock, trying to figure out what to do. Call you? Tell my family? I barely slept. I barely ate. I just walked around my apartment in a daze, one hand on my stomach, talking to this tiny thing that was growing inside me." "What did you decide?" Louis asked, his voice barely audible. I decided to keep it, Gabriella said. I decided that even though the timing was terrible and you weren't ready and we'd just broken up, I wanted this baby, our baby. I started planning how I'd tell you, rehearsing the words. I was going to call you after I got through the first trimester, once it was safer, once I'd had time to process everything. Louis noticed her use of past tense. What happened? Gabriella's hands trembled around the stone. At 8 weeks, I started bleeding. Not much at first, just spotting. But it got worse. I went to the hospital where I worked, and they did an ultrasound. Her voice cracked. There was no heartbeat. The baby had stopped developing at 7 weeks. They called it a missed miscarriage. The words hit Louis like a physical blow. He doubled over, his chest tight, unable to pull in air. A baby. Their baby. A child he'd never known existed had existed and then stopped existing, and he hadn't been there. He hadn't known. He hadn't held Gabriella's hand, or grieved with her, or, "I'm so sorry," he choked out. "Gabriella, I'm so sorry." "I lost the baby alone," she continued, staring at the water now. "Well, not completely alone. Sophia was there, but you weren't. And the worst part was knowing that even if you had been there, it wouldn't have changed anything. The baby was already gone." "You should have told me," Louis said, tears running down his face. "Even after. You should have. I had a right to know." "Did you?" Gabriella's voice turned sharp. "What would it have changed, Louis? Would you have quit racing? Would you have come back? Or would you have sent flowers and said you were sorry and then gotten on with your life while I dealt with the physical and emotional aftermath?" The accusation stung because Louis didn't know the answer. What would he have done 7 years ago, at the height of his career obsession? Would he have dropped everything? Or would he have compartmentalized it, told himself that nature had made the decision for them, and thrown himself even harder into racing to avoid the pain? "I don't know," he admitted. "I want to say I would have been there for you. But honestly, I don't know what 28-year-old Louis would have done, and that kills me." Gabriella nodded slowly. "That's why I didn't tell you. Because I knew you'd either sacrifice everything out of guilt, or you'd break my heart again by not sacrificing enough. Either way, we'd both end up miserable." They sat in heavy silence. The sun had dropped lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Somewhere across the lake, a boat's engine hummed, life going on, indifferent to their grief. "Was it a boy or a girl?" Louis asked quietly. "Too early to tell. They said it was probably a girl, but it's not definitive that early." Gabriella finally dropped the stone into the water. They watched ripples spread across the calm surface. "I named her anyway. In my head. I called her Luna. Because I found out I was pregnant on a night with a full moon, and it seemed, I don't know, it seemed right." "Luna," Louis repeated, tasting the name. His daughter. The daughter who never got to be. "That's beautiful." "After I lost her, I fell apart," Gabriella continued. "Completely. I took a leave from the hospital. I couldn't be around pregnant women or babies without breaking down. Sophia moved in with me because she was afraid I'd do something." She stopped, then pushed forward. "I was in a very dark place, Louis. The kind of dark where you start thinking the world might be better off without you in it." Louis's hand found hers, gripping it tightly. "Gabriella." "I didn't," she assured him quickly. "Obviously. But I thought about it. More than once. It felt like I'd lost everything. You, the baby, my sense of who I was. I couldn't see a way forward." "What changed?" "Sophia wouldn't let me give up. She literally watched me every second for 3 months. And eventually, very slowly, I started to heal. I threw myself into work. I signed up for Doctors Without Borders because I needed to be somewhere where my pain felt small compared to the suffering around me. I needed to save other people's children since I couldn't save my own. She turned to face Louis fully now. That's where I met Alessandro, in a refugee camp in Syria, surrounded by wounded children and grieving mothers. He was good and steady and safe. And I thought that was what I needed. Someone who would never leave me alone with that kind of pain. But he wasn't me, Louis said. No, Gabriella agreed. He wasn't you. And for a long time I told myself that was a good thing. That I needed someone different, someone who wouldn't hurt me. But the truth is, I compared every man to you. Alessandro never had a chance, because I'd already given my heart away 7 years ago in the rain, and I never got it back. Louis pulled her close, and she came willingly, resting her head on his shoulder. They sat like that, holding each other, grieving for the child they'd lost and the years they'd wasted being apart. "Why did you tell me now?" Louis asked. "Why not keep it secret forever?" "Because I was about to marry Alessandro while carrying this secret," Gabriella said. "And it felt wrong, like I was building a life on a lie. Like Luna deserved better than to be forgotten or erased. She existed, Louis. For 7 weeks, she existed. And she was ours." "She was ours," Louis repeated, his voice thick with emotion. "And I never got to know her. I never got to—" He broke off, overwhelmed. They cried together as the sun set over Lake Como, mourning a daughter they'd never held. A future that had been taken from them, years of grief carried alone that could have been shared. Finally, when the tears subsided and the sky had turned to deep purple, Louis spoke again. "I can't change the past. I can't go back and be there for you when you needed me. I can't meet Luna or hold her or tell her she was loved." He pulled back to look Gabriella in the eyes. "But I'm here now. And I swear to you, on Luna's memory, that I will never let you face anything alone again. Never." "Louis, that's a big promise." "It's a necessary one," he interrupted. "Gabriella, we've wasted 7 years being afraid. 7 years of protecting ourselves from hurt by staying apart. And what did it get us? You almost married someone you didn't love. And I achieved everything professionally and felt empty inside. We were both still carrying this pain, just separately instead of together." "What are you saying?" Louis took both her hands in his. "I'm saying I love you. I've always loved you. And I'm done letting fear make my decisions. I'm done choosing safe over right. I want to build a life with you, not the life we could have had 7 years ago, but a new life. One where we face things together." "I'm scared," Gabriella whispered. "What if it doesn't work? What if we try and fail? What if—" "Then we fail together," Louis said firmly. "But Gabriella, what if we don't fail? What if this is our second chance? What if everything that's happened, the breakup, the years apart, even losing Luna, what if it all led us here, to this moment, unto becoming people who are finally ready for each other?" Gabriella searched his face, looking for doubt, for hesitation, for any sign that he wasn't completely sure. But Louis held her gaze steadily, letting her see everything: his love, his fear, his absolute certainty that this was right. "I stopped a wedding," she said, a slightly hysterical laugh escaping. "I publicly humiliated Alessandro and horrified both our families. I destroyed months of planning and probably torpedoed relationships I'll never get back. All for, what? The hope that we can make it work this time?" "Not just hope," Louis corrected. "Certainty. I retired from Formula One, Gabriella. I walked away from the sport that defined me for 20 years. That's not hope. Or maybe, or we'll see. That's me burning my bridges to show you I'm serious. But what if you regret it? I already told you, I won't. I'm 40 years old. I've won everything there is to win. Every day I stayed in racing was just me avoiding the scarier challenge of actually living life instead of just racing through it. He squeezed her hands. You didn't make me retire. You helped me see it was time. And now I get to figure out who Lewis Hamilton is without the race car. I'm excited about that. Terrified, but excited. What would we even do? Gabriella asked. Where would we live? How would we navigate our careers? And we'd figure it out, Lewis said. Together, one day at a time. No more trying to plan every detail. No more letting fear of the unknown keep us apart. Gabriella looked down at her wedding dress, ruined and muddy at the hem, a symbol of the life she'd almost chosen. Then she looked at Lewis, really looked at him, and saw not the man who'd hurt her 7 years ago, but the man he'd become. Someone who'd learned from his mistakes. Someone who was willing to risk everything for love. Okay, she whispered. Okay, Lewis repeated, afraid to hope too much. Okay, let's try. Let's do this terrifying, stupid, brave thing. Let's build a life together and see what happens. She smiled through her tears. But Lewis, if you hurt me again, if you make me second place or take me for granted, or I won't, he promised. And if I ever start to, you call me on it immediately. We communicate. We work through things. We don't let problems fester like we did before. We'll need therapy, Gabriella said. Probably couples therapy. Definitely individual therapy for me. Whatever we need, Lewis agreed. I'm all in. She leaned forward and kissed him, soft and tentative at first, then deeper, more certain. It was different from their kisses 7 years ago. Less desperate, more grounded. The kiss of two people who'd been broken and had done the hard work of putting themselves back together. When they pulled apart, Gabriella was smiling, a real smile that reached her eyes. So what now? She asked. I'm in a wedding dress on a dock. You're wearing a suit that's going to be wrinkled beyond repair. And we've both just blown up our lives spectacularly. Lewis laughed, feeling lighter than he had in years. Now we get you out of that dress and into something comfortable. Then we order room service, hide from the press that's probably descending on this place, and start planning our actual future instead of the one we thought we should have. That's it? That's your grand plan? Do you want something more elaborate? Gabriella thought for a moment, then shook her head. No. Simple sounds perfect, actually. I've had enough elaborate for one lifetime. They stood, Gabriella gathering her heavy dress, Lewis offering his arm. They walked back toward the villa as stars began appearing in the darkening sky. Lewis? Gabriella said as they reached the garden. Yeah? Thank you for coming. Thank you for not giving up on us. Always, Lewis said, pulling her close. I'll always come when you call. And this time, I'm staying. The media storm hit before they even made it back to Lewis's suite. As they crossed the villa grounds, Lewis's phone, which he'd silenced hours ago, suddenly buzzed with such intensity it felt like it might vibrate out of his pocket. Marcus appeared from the shadows near the entrance, his face grim. We have a problem, he said. Actually, we have about 50 problems, and they're all carrying cameras. The press? Lewis asked, though he already knew. Descended like locusts 20 minutes ago. Someone at the wedding live-streamed the whole thing. It's everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Formula One champion stops wedding is trending worldwide. There are photographers at every entrance, News vans on the main road, helicopters circling overhead. Gabriella paled. Oh God, my family, Alessandro's family. This is going to be a nightmare, Marcus finished bluntly. Alessandro's team has already released a statement calling the situation deeply painful and a private family matter. Your father has been calling every Italian news outlet he has connections with, trying to control the narrative. And Louis, your publicist, has fielded approximately 200 interview requests in the last hour. Louis tightened his arm around Gabriella. Get us to my suite without going through the main areas. Is that possible? I've already arranged it. Service corridors. But Louis, you can't hide forever. You're going to have to make a statement eventually. Not tonight, Louis said firmly. Tonight, Gabriella and I need space to process everything that just happened. The world can wait. Marcus nodded and led them through a maze of staff-only passages. And they could hear the chaos on the other side of walls. Raised voices, camera shutters clicking, reporters shouting questions. But Marcus got them to the Cardinale suite without incident. Once inside, Louis locked the door and pulled the curtains closed. Gabriella stood in the middle of the room in her wedding dress, looking lost and overwhelmed. I need to get out of this dress, she said, her voice shaky. I can't breathe in this thing. Bathroom is through there, Louis pointed. But Gabriella, you might need help with the buttons. There must be 100 of them. She looked at him for a moment, vulnerable and uncertain. Could you help me? Louis's throat tightened. Of course. They went into the bathroom, all marble and gold fixtures, absurdly luxurious for this moment of breaking down, as Gabriella turned her back to him, and Louis began working on the tiny pearl buttons that ran from her neck to her lower back. His hands shook. This was intimate in a way that had nothing to do with desire, and everything to do with trust. Each button he freed felt like removing armor, like helping her shed the life she'd almost chosen. I can't believe this is real, Gabriella said quietly. This morning I woke up thinking I'd be married by sunset. Instead, I'm here with you, and Alessandro hates me, and my father probably won't speak to me for a year, and the entire world is watching our disaster unfold in real time. Do you regret it? Louis asked, his fingers pausing on a button. Stopping the wedding? No. How I did it? Yes. Alessandro deserved better than being humiliated in front of everyone. She was quiet for a moment. Sure, but if I'd called it off privately before the ceremony, I don't think I would have had the courage. I needed to be standing there, about to make vows I couldn't keep, to finally admit the truth. Louis finished with the last button. The dress loosened, and Gabriella caught it before it fell. Thank you. Can you give me a few minutes? Take all the time you need. Louis went back into the main room where Marcus was on his phone, probably dealing with the continuing fallout. He ended the call when he saw Louis. James wants to know if you're issuing a joint statement with Gabriella or separate ones, Marcus said. Neither. Not tonight. Louis, the longer you wait, the worse the speculation gets. There are already conspiracy theories flying around that you've been having an affair for years, that you got her pregnant, and that you paid Alessandro to step aside. Louis ran his hands through his hair. Let them speculate. I'm not making any statements while Gabriella is still in shock. When we do talk to the press, it'll be on our terms, when we're ready. Your team is freaking out. They want to know if the retirement announcement was genuine, or if you're planning to return. It was genuine. Is genuine. I meant every word. Louis sank onto the sofa. Marcus, I know this is chaos. I know I'm making everyone's job harder. But for once in my life, I need to put the person I love before managing everyone else's reactions. Marcus studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, I'll run interference for as long as I can. But Louis, eventually you're going to have to face the music. Both of you are. I know, just not tonight. The bathroom door opened, and Gabriella emerged wearing one of the hotel's plush robes, her hair down, her face scrubbed clean of makeup. She looked younger, more vulnerable, more real than she had at any point during the day. Marcus took one look at her exhausted face and grabbed his jacket. I'm going to get you both some food. Something tells me you haven't eaten all day. I'll be back in 20 minutes. After he left, silence settled over the room. Gabriella stood uncertainly by the bathroom door, and Louis remained on the sofa, neither quite knowing how to navigate this new reality they'd created. I should call Sophia, Gabriella said finally. She's probably worried sick. Use my phone if yours is being bombarded. Gabriella did, and Louis listened to one side of the conversation as she explained to her sister that she was safe, that she was with Louis, added that she didn't know what happened next, but she needed time to figure it out. Sophia wants to know if you're planning to whisk me away to some secret location, Gabriella said after hanging up. Apparently, that's what the tabloids are speculating. Do you want to be whisked away? Gabriella considered the question. Maybe. I don't know. Part of me wants to hide from the world forever. But another part knows I need to face this. I need to talk to Alessandro. Apologize properly. I need to deal with my family. I can't just run away. We'll do whatever you need, Louis said. If you want to stay and face everything head-on, I'm here. If you want to disappear for a while until things calm down, I can arrange that too. This is your call, Gabriella. She moved to sit beside him on the sofa, curling her legs underneath her. Can I ask you something? Anything. Do you really not regret retiring? Even a little bit? Louis thought about it honestly. Ask me in a month when the new season starts and I'm not on the grid. Ask me when my former teammates are racing and I'm watching from home. I'll probably have moments of regret, moments where I miss it so much it hurts. Then why? Because those moments will pass, Louis interrupted gently. And at the end of the day, I'll still come home to something real. Someone real. I'll have a life instead of just a career. And Gabriella, I've had the career. I've lived that life for 20 years. It was incredible, but it was also consuming. I want to know who I am when I'm not Lewis Hamilton, the race car driver. Who do you think you are? I don't know yet, Louis admitted. That's the scary part. But I'm excited to find out. Maybe I'll be Louis who mentors young drivers. Or Louis who works on racing safety initiatives. Or Louis who does charity work full-time. Or maybe I'll discover something completely different that I've never had time to explore because I was always racing. Gabriella leaned her head on his shoulder. I never thought I'd hear you talk like this. 7 years ago, racing was everything to you. 7 years ago, I was an idiot who didn't know what really mattered. They sat in comfortable silence until Marcus returned with bags of food from a local restaurant. Pasta, bread, wine, tiramisu. He set everything up on the coffee table like an impromptu picnic. The press is getting more aggressive, Marcus reported. Hotel security is holding them back, but barely. You should probably plan to leave tomorrow morning. Or early. I can arrange a car, a back exit. Where would we go? Gabriella asked. I have a place, Louis said. A house in Tuscany that almost no one knows about. Small, remote, private. We could hide there for a few days while the initial frenzy dies down. Tuscany, Gabriella repeated. That sounds perfect. They ate, and slowly the tension began to ease. The wine helped, so did the carbs. But mostly it was the relief of being together, of not having to pretend anymore, of finally being honest after years of running from the truth. "Tell me about Luna," Louis said softly, after Marcus had excused himself to his own room. "Tell me everything. What she might have been like. What you imagined." Gabriella's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled through them. "I imagined she'd have your smile. That's what I thought about most. That someday I'd see my baby smile at me with your exact smile, and I'd feel both joy and heartbreak at the same time. What else? I imagined teaching her to be strong, to know her worth, to never settle for someone who didn't value her completely." Gabriella took a shaky breath. "I imagined all the ways I'd love her better than I loved myself. All the mistakes I wouldn't make with her." Louis pulled out the compass from his pocket, the one Gabriella had returned that morning. It felt like a lifetime ago. "Can we keep this out? As a reminder of Luna? Of everything we've been through to get here?" "I'd like that," Gabriella whispered. They talked late into the night, about Luna, about the years they'd lost, about their fears and hopes for the future. Around midnight, the exhaustion finally caught up with them. "You should take the bed," Louis said. "I'll sleep on the sofa." Gabriella looked at him for a long moment. And hear me out. We could both sleep in the bed. Just sleep. I don't want to be alone tonight, Louis. I've been alone with this grief for 7 years. Can we just be together?" "Are you sure?" "I'm not sure about anything except that I don't want to be in separate rooms right now." They climbed into the enormous bed, staying on opposite sides at first, awkward and careful. But gradually, inevitably, they moved closer. Gabriella ended up with her head on Louis's chest, his arm around her, holding her as she finally let herself fully grieve. For Luna, for the years they'd lost, for the pain she'd carried alone. Louis held her through it all, his own tears falling silently into her hair. "I'm sorry," he kept whispering. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I'm so sorry you went through that alone." "You're here now," Gabriella said, her voice hoarse from crying. "That's what matters." Eventually, they both fell into exhausted sleep, wrapped around each other, finally together after 7 years of being apart. Dawn came too soon. Louis woke to find Gabriella already awake, staring at the ceiling. "I have to talk to Alessandro," she said without preamble, "before we leave. I owe him a proper apology, not just the public humiliation I gave him yesterday." "Do you want me to come with you?" "No. This is something I need to do alone. But Louis, I need you to trust me. Trust that I'm choosing you, even when I'm not physically by your side." "I trust you," Louis said simply. She always. Gabriella borrowed clothes from Louis, jeans and a t-shirt that hung loose on her smaller frame. She looked nothing like the elegant bride of yesterday, and everything like the woman Louis had fallen in love with 8 years ago. Real, honest, brave. "I'll be back in 2 hours," she promised. "Then we leave for Tuscany?" "Then we leave for Tuscany," Louis confirmed. After she left, Louis paced the suite nervously. Marcus came in with coffee and breakfast, took one look at Louis's face, and sighed. "She went to see Alessandro," Louis explained. "And you're worried." "I'm terrified," Louis admitted. "What if she gets there and realizes she made a mistake? What if Alessandro convinces her to give him another chance? What if—" "Louis, stop. You're spiraling." Marcus handed him coffee. "She chose you. Yesterday, in front of everyone, knowing exactly what it would cost her, she chose you. Trust that." I'm trying. Try harder, because she's going to need you to be solid when she comes back. Apologizing to Alessandro is going to destroy her. She needs to know you'll be here, steady and certain." Louis nodded and tried to calm his racing thoughts. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through the news. Articles about the wedding disaster, speculation about his retirement, opinion pieces about whether he was a hero or a villain in this story. One headline caught his eye: "Lewis Hamilton attended his ex-girlfriend's wedding. What he did next left everyone silent." He clicked the article. It was surprisingly fair, laying out the facts without too much sensationalism. The comments section, however, was a war zone. Some people calling him romantic, others calling him selfish. See, everyone having an opinion about his life. But Louis found he didn't care. For once, public opinion didn't matter. All that mattered was the woman who would hopefully walk back through that door in an hour, ready to start a new life with him. Gabriella returned exactly 2 hours later, as promised. Her eyes were red from crying, but her shoulders were straight, her expression resolved. "How did it go?" Louis asked carefully. "He was gracious," Gabriella said quietly. "More gracious than I deserved. He said he forgives me, that he hopes I find happiness, and that he never wants to see me again." "Gabriella, it's okay. It's what I expected, what I deserved." She moved into Louis's arms. His mother was there too. Rosa. She hugged me and told me to be brave. I don't know why that made me cry harder than anything else, but it did. "What do you need?" Louis asked, holding her tight. "I need to leave. I need to get away from this place, from the memories of what almost happened. I need to start figuring out what comes next." She pulled back to look at him. "Take me to Tuscany. Show me this secret house. Help me believe that we can actually build something real." "I can do that," Louis promised. Within an hour, they were in a car speeding away from Lake Como, leaving behind the disaster and the press and the ruins of the wedding that never was. Marcus drove while Louis and Gabriella sat in the back, hands intertwined, watching the Italian countryside blur past. Louis's phone buzzed with a message from James, his publicist. "The press is going crazy wanting a statement. I can't hold them off much longer. What should I tell them?" Louis thought for a moment. She then typed, "Tell them this. Lewis Hamilton and Gabriella Moretti are taking private time together to heal and build a future. They ask for privacy and understanding during this transition. No further statements will be made at this time." He showed the message to Gabriella. "Is that okay?" She read it and nodded. "It's perfect. Simple. True. No drama." Louis sent it to James, then powered off his phone completely. "No more outside world. For the next week at least, it's just us." "Just us," Gabriella repeated, and smiled. A real smile, full of hope and possibility. As they drove deeper into Tuscany, away from the chaos and toward an uncertain but chosen future, Louis thought about the title of that article. What he did next left everyone silent. What he'd done was simple, really. He'd shown up. He'd been honest. He'd made the grand gesture of retiring from Formula One. He'd given Gabriella space to make her own choice. And then, most importantly, he'd stayed. He'd held her while she cried. He'd listened to the truth about Luna. He'd promised to face the future together, whatever it brought. That was what he'd done next. Not a dramatic rescue or a movie moment. Just the quiet, steady work of showing someone they were loved enough to be worth the risk. And it had been enough. The Tuscan sun hung low in the September sky, painting everything gold. Louis stood in the kitchen of the renovated farmhouse, fighting with pasta dough that seemed determined to defeat him. Flour covered his hands, his shirt, and somehow his forehead. "You're overthinking it," Gabriella called from the doorway, trying not to laugh. "I'm following the recipe exactly," Louis protested, holding up his phone with the YouTube tutorial still playing. "That's your problem. Pasta isn't about precision, it's about feel." She came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "You can calculate tire pressure and fuel loads down to the decimal point, but you can't make pasta?" "Apparently not." She gently nudged him aside and took over, her hands moving with practiced confidence. Louis watched, mesmerized as always by the simple domesticity of this moment. Gabriella in his kitchen, their kitchen, making dinner on a random Tuesday evening. This was his life now. "How was your day?" she asked, kneading the dough. "Good." The junior driver program announced 3 new scholarship recipients. One of them is a girl from Brazil, only 14, but incredibly talented. It reminds me of me at that age, just hungry to prove herself. "That's wonderful," Gabriella said warmly. "And the safety initiative meeting?" "Productive. We're implementing new barrier designs at 5 tracks next season. It'll save lives." Louis smiled. "Turns out I can still contribute to racing without actually racing." "Told you." The past 18 months had been a journey of discovery. After the disaster at Lake Como, which the media had dubbed the wedding that broke the internet, Louis and Gabriella had hidden away in this Tuscan farmhouse for 3 weeks. No phones, no press, just the 2 of them learning how to be together without the weight of the past crushing them. It hadn't been easy. They'd fought, real fights about trust and fear and learned patterns. Gabriella had panic attacks when Louis traveled for work. I'm convinced he wouldn't come back. Louis struggled with his identity outside of racing, feeling lost without the structure and purpose it had provided. But they'd also laughed. They'd talked until sunrise. They'd slowly, carefully built something real. And they'd done it with help. Couples therapy every week, sometimes twice a week when things got hard. Individual therapy too. Learning to communicate, to not run when things got scary, to choose each other even when it wasn't easy. "What time is Sophia coming?" Louis asked, watching Gabriella shape the pasta. 7. She's bringing her new boyfriend. Fair warning, she said he's a fan of yours, so expect awkward questions about your racing career. Louis groaned. "Great. Be nice. Sophia's happy. That's what matters." Sophia had been their rock through everything. And when Gabriella's father refused to speak to her for 6 months, Sophia had been the bridge. When the Italian press had been vicious about the doctor who humiliated a good man, Sophia had defended her sister fiercely. And when Gabriella and Louis had their worst fights, the kind where they almost gave up, Sophia had reminded them why they were fighting in the first place. Gabriella's father had eventually come around, though he still looked at Louis with suspicion. Her mother had been faster to forgive, understanding in a way only mothers could that sometimes the heart wants what it wants. Logic be damned. Alessandro had moved on, as Rosa had promised. He'd met a woman named Teresa 6 months after the wedding disaster. They'd married quietly last spring, and by all accounts, they were genuinely happy. Gabriella had sent a gift, an olive tree, a symbol of peace, and received a thank you note that simply said, "No hard feelings. Be happy." Louis had framed that note. It represented grace, forgiveness, the possibility of moving forward without bitterness. "Penny for your thoughts?" Gabriella asked, catching his distant expression. "Just thinking about how much has changed," Louis said. 18 months ago I was still racing. You were about to marry someone else, and now you're attempting to murder innocent pasta dough, and I'm living in Tuscany. Gabriella finished with a grin. You miss Milan? Sometimes, she admitted. I miss the hospital, some of my colleagues. But I don't miss the person I was becoming there. The one who'd convinced herself that safe was the same as happy. Gabriella now worked 3 days a week at a nearby hospital, teaching emergency medicine to students. The rest of her time she spent doing telemedicine consultations with underfunded clinics around the world, a compromise that let her help without burning out. They'd also started a foundation together, the Luna Foundation, dedicated to supporting parents who'd experienced pregnancy loss. It provided therapy, support groups, and resources. Gabriella had been nervous about making Luna's existence public, but she'd realized that their daughter's brief life could help others. The response had been overwhelming. Thousands of people had shared their own stories of loss, finding comfort in knowing they weren't alone. The foundation had helped hundreds of families in its first year. A small cry came from the baby monitor on the counter. Both Louis and Gabriella froze, listening. Another cry, more insistent this time. I'll get her, Louis said, already moving toward the stairs. She's probably hungry, Gabriella called after him. Louis climbed the stairs to the nursery, a sunny room they'd painted yellow, filled with stuffed animals and books and love. In the crib, 6-month-old Emma Charlotte Hamilton Moretti was waking from her nap, her little face scrunched up in pre-cry mode. Hey, beautiful girl, Louis said softly, lifting her into his arms. Did you have a good nap? Emma immediately stopped fussing and grabbed his finger with her tiny hand, her dark eyes, so like her mother's, staring up at him with complete trust. Louis felt his heart expand, in that way it always did when he held his daughter, the way it had every single day since she was born. They hadn't planned to have a baby so soon. Gabriella had wanted to wait, and afraid of the memories pregnancy would bring back. But 9 months after Lake Como, she'd missed a period and taken a test with shaking hands. Louis had held her while she cried, tears of fear and grief and hope all tangled together. They'd gone to every doctor's appointment together. He'd held her hand through every ultrasound, both of them holding their breath until they heard the heartbeat. He'd been there for every milestone, every scare, every moment of the pregnancy that they should have experienced 7 years ago. And when Emma had finally arrived, healthy, perfect, screaming her little lungs out, Gabriella had looked at Louis and said, "She has your smile, just like I always imagined." Now Louis carried Emma downstairs, her head on his shoulder, her little body warm and solid and real. Gabriella turned from the stove, and her face softened in that way it always did when she saw them together. "Someone's hungry," Louis announced. Gabriella washed her hands and took Emma, settling into the rocking chair they kept in the corner of the kitchen. Louis turned away to give them privacy, focusing on the pasta that was actually starting to look edible. "Louis," Gabriella said softly, "you can look. You don't have to turn away every time." He turned back, watching his daughter nurse, watching his partner glow with that particular contentment that came from feeding your child. It was intimate and beautiful and every day all at once. "I'm still getting used to it," he admitted. "All of this, having a family, being present for the small moments." "How does it compare to racing?" Gabriella asked with a knowing smile. Louis thought about it seriously. Racing was an adrenaline rush. Every weekend was a high. The speed, the competition, the victory. It was intense and all-consuming. And this? This is different. It's quieter. There's no crowd cheering or champagne spraying. But Gabriella, when Emma smiled at me for the first time, when she grabbed my finger like I was her whole world, when I watch you with her and remember that we made this tiny human together, That's a different kind of high. One that doesn't fade when the weekend's over. Do you miss it? Really? Truly? Sometimes, Lewis admitted. When the new season started, I watched the first few races and felt this phantom ache, like a part of me was missing. But then Emma cried, and I was the one who got to comfort her. Or you needed help with something, and I was actually here instead of on another continent. But the ache faded pretty quickly. He paused, considering. I think what I really missed wasn't racing itself. It was feeling like I had purpose. But I've found new purpose. The junior driver program, the safety initiatives, the foundation, being a father. It's different, but it's not less. If anything, it's more. Emma finished eating and Gabriella handed her to Lewis for burping. He held his daughter against his shoulder, patting her back gently, marveling as he always did at how something so small could completely reorganize your priorities. I talked to my therapist about Luna this week, Gabriella said quietly, watching them, about how I'm feeling now that we have Emma. How are you feeling? Grateful, terrified, sometimes guilty, like by being happy with Emma, and I'm somehow forgetting Luna or replacing her. You're not replacing her, Lewis said firmly. I know, logically, I know, but feelings aren't logical. Gabriella stood and started working on the pasta again. My therapist reminded me that Emma exists because Luna existed, that we're different people, better people, because of what we went through, that grief and joy can coexist. They can, Lewis agreed. I think about Luna all the time. I wonder what she would have been like, if she'd have had your stubborn streak or my terrible sense of humor. And then I look at Emma and feel this overwhelming love mixed with this ache for the daughter I never got to meet. Emma burped impressively, and Lewis laughed. Good job, Piccolina. The doorbell rang at exactly 7. Sophia arrived with her boyfriend, Marco, a software engineer who did indeed. He spent the first 10 minutes asking Lewis detailed questions about race strategy before Sophia elbowed him into silence. They ate dinner on the terrace as the sun set, Emma in her bouncer nearby, occasionally making the random noises that babies make. The conversation flowed easily. Sophia's work as an architect, Marco's new project, Lewis's foundation work, Gabriella's latest telemedicine case. It was normal. Beautifully, perfectly normal. After dinner, Sophia helped clean up while the men took Emma for a walk around the garden. When they were alone, Sophia turned to her sister. You look happy, she observed. Really happy. Not the, I'm trying to convince myself I'm happy version from the Alessandro days. I am happy, Gabriella confirmed. Scared sometimes, anxious sometimes, but fundamentally happy. Good. And because if Lewis ever hurts you again, I have a list of places to hide his body. Gabriella laughed. He won't. Not because he's perfect, he's definitely not perfect, but because we've both learned how to communicate when things get hard. We don't run anymore. We stay and work through it. That's mature of you. Therapy will do that to a person. Sophia was quiet for a moment, then, do you ever regret how it happened? The wedding? The public disaster? All of it? Gabriella considered the question. I regret hurting Alessandro. I regret the timing and the public humiliation. But do I regret stopping the wedding? No. If I'd married him, I'd be living a half-life, going through the motions, of wondering, what if? This life, messy and complicated and real, this is the one I was meant to live. Even though the entire world watched you melt down, even though. You know what the strangest thing is? We get letters. People who saw what happened and were inspired to make their own brave choices. Women who left unhappy relationships, men who quit jobs they hated, people who stopped settling for safe. You're kidding. I'm not. Louis and I have a whole file of them. Turns out, our disaster gave other people permission to be honest about their own lives. Gabriella smiled. So, yeah, I'd do it all again, though maybe with less of an audience next time. Later that night, after Sophia and Marco had left, after Emma was asleep in her crib, Louis and Gabriella sat on their bedroom balcony. The Tuscan hills stretched out before them, dotted with lights from distant farmhouses. The air smelled like jasmine and earth. Gabriella's head rested on Louis's shoulder, his arm around her waist. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes when two people are completely at ease with each other. "Louis," Gabriella said eventually, "do you remember what you said to me on the dock at Lake Como? About some paths circling back?" "I remember. I didn't believe you then. I thought we'd missed our chance, that too much time had passed, that some things couldn't be fixed." She turned to look at him. "But you were right. We circled back. And this version of us, the one that's been broken and put back together, is stronger than we ever were before." Louis kissed her forehead. "We're not the same people we were 7 years ago. We've both grown, changed, learned hard lessons, and we're still learning, every day." "Do you think we'll make it?" Gabriella asked. "Long term, forever?" "I think we'll have hard days. Days when we want to run. Days when fear tries to convince us that being apart is safer than being together." Louis pulled her closer. "But I also think we've come too far to give up easily. We've fought too hard for this to let it go without a real fight." "That's not a very romantic answer. You want romance? Okay." Louis stood and pulled Gabriella to her feet. "Gabriella Rose Moretti, you are the love of my life. You're the person I think about first thing every morning and last thing every night. You're the reason I finally understood that winning isn't about crossing finish lines first. It's about building a life worth living. You're Emma's mother, Luna's mother, and the bravest person I know. And I will spend every day of the rest of my life choosing you." Gabriella's eyes filled with tears. "That's better. I'm not done." Louis reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "I've been carrying this around for 3 months, waiting for the right moment. But I realized there is no perfect moment. There's just now, us, on a random Tuesday evening in Tuscany." He opened the box to reveal a simple ring, sapphire surrounded by small diamonds. "This isn't about grand gestures or proving anything to anyone. This is just me asking you. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my person for whatever comes next?" Gabriella stared at the ring, then at Louis, then back at the ring. "We already have a baby together. We own a house together. We run a foundation together. Oh, isn't marriage kind of redundant at this point?" "Probably," Louis admitted. "But I want it anyway. I want to stand up in front of the people we love and promise you forever. I want you to have my name legally, not just hyphenated on Emma's birth certificate. I want to call you my wife." Even after watching my last attempt at getting married blow up spectacularly? Especially after that, because that disaster led us here, and here is exactly where I want to be. Gabriella laughed through her tears. "You're supposed to be on one knee, you know. I'm retired from dramatic gestures. Lewis Hamilton, get on one knee right now, or I'm saying no just to spite you." Laughing, Louis dropped to one knee on their balcony, ring box held up, the Tuscan stars witnessing this moment. "Gabriella Rose Moretti, will you marry me?" "Yes," she said, pulling him up. "Yes, yes, yes. But Louis, can we please have a small wedding? Like 5 people maximum? I can't handle another public spectacle. We can get married in this garden with just Emma and Marcus and Sophia, if that's what you want." "That's exactly what I want." Gabriella kissed him as he slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "When?" "Whenever you're ready. Next month, next year, 10 years from now. I'm not going anywhere." They held each other as the night deepened around them, 2 people who'd found their way back to each other through 7 years of loss and growth and becoming people worthy of the love they'd always felt. Inside, Emma stirred in her crib, making the little noises that meant she'd wake soon. Gabriella sighed. "Duty calls." "I'll get her," Louis said. "You've been up with her the last 3 nights." "We'll both go. We're a team, remember?" They walked back inside together, toward their daughter, toward their life, toward a future they were building one ordinary, extraordinary day at a time. Lewis Hamilton had attended his ex-girlfriend's wedding 18 months ago. What he'd done next had left everyone silent. Not because it was dramatic or shocking, but because it was simple. He'd stayed. He'd shown up every day. He'd done the work: therapy, communication, compromise. He'd learned that real love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect timing. It was about choosing someone every day, even on the days when it was hard. He'd traded championships for diaper changes, podium finishes for school drop-offs he'd one day do, the roar of engines for a baby's laughter. And he'd never been happier. Sometimes the best victories were the quiet ones, the ones no one cheered for, the ones that happened in kitchens and nurseries and ordinary Tuesday evenings. Those were the victories that lasted. Those were the ones worth fighting for. So that's the incredible true story of how Lewis Hamilton chose love over fame, and how Gabriella found the courage to follow her heart instead of playing it safe. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching this video from? Drop your country or city in the comments below. We love connecting with viewers from all around the world. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We're here to spread kindness, hope, and inspiring stories that remind us all that it's never too late to choose love and courage over fear. And don't go anywhere yet. Click on the video appearing on your screen right now for another incredible story that will move you. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is listen to your heart, even when the whole world is watching.